Dear fellow humans, President of UCC, Dr. Michael Murphy, Senior Vice President, Academic and Registrar, Professor Caroline Fennell, Vice President for Teaching and Learning, Professor John O'Halloran, members of the governing body, distinguished academic staff, our new Quercus academic entrance scholars, families who have seen them through it all, and the teachers to whom they attribute their success. It is indeed a pleasure and privilege to speak with you today as a Quercus Active Citizenship Scholar at University College Cork. I'm honored to be here, so thank you for having me here this evening. I hear that many of you here are studying medicine and mathematics. Congratulations on not just passing, but acing biology, and arithmancy, mathematics. We also have with us today those of you who are studying the bountiful subjects of the arts, from modern languages or world languages to music and everything else in between. Or may I just call it Muggle studies, because the world needs you especially right now, so that we wizards who happen to be human understand those in the Muggle world and can express our thoughts in all creative forms to reach those we wish to impact, with freedom of expression, but void of hate speech. So congratulations to you all, and welcome to Hogwarts. After all, University College Cork is the closest thing to Hogwarts in the Muggle world. I was recently asked, when did you decide UCC was the right choice for you? I replied, it was during my first day of orientation when I was given a file on 3 facts of UCC. Number 1, it is progressive. Number 2, it is green. And number 3, it is built upon a tradition of independent thinking, which I now like to call the Holy Trinity that makes me adore this place. It was my first day on campus when I learned that women studied medicine here 20 years before they were allowed to do so at Oxford. That pretty much sealed the deal for me. I was sure that this was the type of progressive institution that I wanted to be part of and call my alma mater. UCC is a university with a true conscience, and its student-led initiative to be aware and reduce the carbon footprint on campus has made us the world's first green campus. This place culminates and reflects its tradition of independent thinking, where we are taught that great minds do not think alike. Having lived and studied across 3 continents thus far, Asia, North America, and now Europe, you would think that adjusting to the weather was the hardest thing to do. But no, trust me, it's mentally adjusting my vocabulary from apartment to flat and elevator to lift so that I don't end up getting lost when I go to the mall. Oh wait, what do you call it here? Shopping center? Right. So on the lines of those being lost, I want to tell you a story of a child who may have lost his potential, because many children and youth around the world may be lost in terms of meeting their potential. This is a story of a young boy that I met in Sri Lanka, and a boy whose talent has forever carved a special memory in my heart. This story has its roots in abject poverty and dates back to a bygone era of a civil war that lasted 3 decades on my island home. Pitted under a large banyan tree in the town of Eravur, in the east coast of Sri Lanka, was a colorful sarwat stall. Sarwat is a popular local drink made of fresh fruit, sugar syrup, chia seeds, and crushed ice. And running his business with no adult in sight was a boy, Dilushan, a 13-year-old schoolboy who was serving his customers with his impeccable technique and very Sri Lankan smile. I had met an entrepreneur in the making. And as I was fixated in awe as he made these drinks to absolute perfection, with no formal bartender training, I asked him what he was doing, and he said, I'm in 8th grade, and I'm currently on school holidays, so I'm running my father's sarwat stall so that he can work another job in the meanwhile. He taught me how to make drinks, so I just follow his technique. I want to own my own business one day, but for that, I want to continue school and do well in school. Education is the only way out of poverty. I knew I had to share this story with the world, so I shared it on Food Beyond Borders, a global food story movement I founded this year. Because there is nothing that brings people together and unites us as one than the very substrate of life, food. Dilushan's story didn't end there. We exchanged contact details, and I gave him some change I had as pocket money for him to keep, which he shyly refused until I just left it there. And I said we would be in touch. A few hours later, as I was driving back home, I got a call, and it was Dilushan's dad on the line. He had used those few rupees to top up his dad's phone and call back. His dad told me that his son was gleaming from year to year, and that he hadn't stopped talking about my visit to his shop. He also told me that Dilushan didn't even have a proper pair of shoes for school, and how he wanted him to succeed in school, as this was the only way forward. This week, my friends in medicine and dentistry at UCC, one who is present here today, took it upon themselves to raise enough money through a food sale on campus to get Dilushan a bicycle to go to school, because they believe in education above all, so that a kid they haven't even met has the chance that they have had to succeed in life. This is Dilushan's story. There are thousands of kids like Dilushan across the world, from Nigeria to Palestine to Mali, living in places torn by conflict and the resultant vicious cycle of poverty that comes for free as an add-on. And they all deserve better. I don't think I need to tell you that we wouldn't have the type of connectivity we have today if not for the son of a Syrian refugee from a few decades ago. Yes, you guessed that right. The company that changed America with a fruit, Apple, and the person behind it, Steve Jobs. Or that Einstein himself was a refugee. This only goes to show us that optimizing every opportunity helps harness the true capacity of human potential. As J.K. Rowling puts it, I quote, "If you choose to use your status and influence to raise your voice on behalf of those who have no voice, if you choose to identify not only with the powerful, but with the powerless, if you retain your ability to imagine yourselves in the lives of those who do not have your advantages, then it will not only be your proud families who celebrate your existence, but the thousands and millions of people whose reality you have helped change. We do not need magic to change the world. We carry all the power we need inside of ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better. So today, I challenge you, in the light of the countless lives lost through modalities that we may not directly have control over as citizens, to not lose hope in humanity, but to invest your energy to live and let live by giving your time to causes that matter to you, by giving your attention and sharing your assets with those who are less fortunate than you, and by giving your sincerity by engaging in meaningful action to change the injustice around you. fMRI scans tell us that the brain on chocolate and when we make love lights up the same way when we help others. So if you think money can buy you happiness, the only caveat is that it can do so when you spend it on others. So you can find happiness even in the darkest places by turning someone else's life around. Remember that you are part of the lucky 7% of the world who are privileged enough to go to university. So just keep that statistic in mind whenever you don't feel like waking up for that morning lecture. Because trust me, I tell myself this every time I feel like sleep is greater than class. Enjoy what you're learning. Never be afraid to question the context or content of what you're learning. And relish campus life, because the friendships that you will make in these years will last a lifetime and will be fundamental to the person you become. This time won't come back, so don't exist in it. Live it. Be the girl or boy who lived. Remember that failure is the most underrated notion in our society. When I need a dose of inspiration, I always go back to J.K. Rowling's speech at Harvard on the benefits of failure, where she says, "It is impossible to live without failing unless you live so cautiously that you might as well have not lived at all, in which case you fail by default." These words have resonated with me every time I have encountered a hurdle, And like many of you, I entered my undergraduate degree with an entrance scholarship at McGill University in Canada. Because of my grades from high school, I was placed directly into second year of undergraduate studies, which was like being put into the deep end and told to swim against the current. And therefore, my first term of university was not just challenging in terms of being 15,000 miles away from home, but more so because I had not been this academically challenged in my life. So although school had always come easy to me, it was then that I realized that I couldn't be lazy intelligent anymore or rely on divine intervention any longer. I just had to work hard if I wanted to keep up. So looking back, I thank my alma mater for instilling in me its motto, by work all things increase and grow. And it was in this realization that I came to terms with the fact that at Hogwarts like these in the world, although you may be at the top of your class when you enter, you will be re-ranked on this journey that you have decided to take. And that is okay, because if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Remember not to be afraid to merge fields, to connect the dots, and to create your own niche in this world in both your personal and professional life. I now study dentistry at UCC, but before that, I majored in biology and minored in international relations at McGill. I graduated on the Dean's Multidisciplinary Undergraduate Research List for my research linking oral cancer and socioeconomic status by coming up with a postulation, the starfish postulation, that compares the anatomy and physiology of a starfish in order for us to better understand the underlying dynamics of modifiable risk factors in oral cancer, including smoking, alcohol, beetle chewing, and erica nut. The very content I had learned as a biology major in a course I thought I would never use past that semester eventually inspired me to make sense of my research results. So always be enticed by what you're learning, because knowledge is never a waste, and oftentimes it fills the gaps in questions that we as humans are pondering to answer. I want to be the type of dentist that is able to draw from clinical dentistry and social theory, one who's able to link molecular epidemiology to history and ethnography to political economy. So PCR to me means both polymerase chain reaction and post-conflict reconstruction, because the undeniable fact is that everything is connected, and to solve many of the complex problems that we face in the world today, fields need to merge and inspire one another. Remember to be wholesome and remain a student for life, because amidst all this science, I love Shakespeare and literature. Therefore, graduating from the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, as well as Trinity College London in speech and drama, is as valuable to me as my undergraduate degree. We don't have to be right-brained or left-brained when we clearly have the potential to be using our whole brain. As the bard wrote, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. So you can play those many parts too." Last week, in the light of the global atrocities that made and didn't make headlines, I wrote a love letter to Beirut, Paris, and beyond from Sri Lanka. It's something I wrote in 20 minutes amid studying for a neuroanatomy exam I had that week. If you have read it, you will see the cognitive science that seeped into it as a result. This letter, where I described my childhood experience of being born and raised in conflict, subsequently took a life of its own and went viral all across the world. And then I didn't only have an exam to worry about, but I also had to deal with the media frenzy around it. But I'm grateful to have amazing parents and an inner circle who are great fans, but also know to keep me grounded and know how to take the star out of stardom, so that I was able to get a first-class honors on the exam last week. Because they know how much learning matters to me. I am thankful to UCC for teaching me what they taught me, and for continuing to do so that I was able to share the scientific truth of how we are wired as humans with the world through my writing. Remember that we have the same 24 hours in a day to make epic things happen. But despite all of this, Grey's Anatomy and Scandal make up my Thursday nights. So yes, I'm like any one of you. Remember that although academically you may be judged on your IQ in class, and I'm sure all of you have IQs that surpass the average, in life you will not only be judged on your IQ, but more so on your EQ, your emotional quotient, and CQ, your cultural quotient. Emotional intelligence is your ability to identify, use, understand, and manage emotions in positive ways, to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. If you have followed many of the world events recently, you will realize how imperative it is for us to strive towards improving this quotient, to create more peacekeepers and peacemakers, and those who choose love over hate. Cultural intelligence at its simplest is a deep and genuine interest in people, together with the belief that whoever you are and whatever position of influence or leadership you hold, you can learn from them. So as the world shrinks and communication accelerates and you develop those new technologies that you imagine, much like the legacy of George Boole, who was a mathematical genius and the first professor of mathematics at UCC, and, as mentioned, is responsible for the digital revolution, you will need to use your cultural intelligence if you want to create something universal in nature. I remember the conversation I had with former President Bill Clinton when I was representing youth at the World Economic Forum in Davos when I was 18. Although he was told that he was late for a meeting with another head of state, he said, "No, they can wait. I have to talk to these kids." And after 10 minutes, and intently listening to the projects that we were running in our communities, he said, "Keep doing what you're doing, and I want to see you leading your countries one day." How did he make us feel like the most important people in the room? Perhaps because regardless of his power and position, he never got carried away, or it appeared so. So when you become doctors and lawyers and dentists and teachers and musicians and actors and politicians and the CEOs of companies and seek professions that directly impact the life of others, always treat people this way. And I assure you, it will bring magic to your workplace. Let me leave you with a simple formula I derived, because math, like many of you here will agree, is very useful in life. You can only find the square root of an unknown x by multiplying that number by itself. So for example, the square root of x squared is x, and this only applies when x is greater than 0. So this is only possible when x is positive. So if x is your heart, be positive. And if two hearts can be brought together, you will be able to find the root to the problem that you're trying to solve in the world. There are those who will be apprehensive to this equation, and it is really up to you to change their hearts by walking the talk. Sometimes it takes time for people to discern your worldview. So engage with them peacefully. Let them marinate their thoughts in yours, and let the flavor of your cooking through your action create a dish that can be enjoyed by all of humanity. And the Buddha agrees, hatred cannot be seized by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law. I am the result of the type of diverse, inclusive, and holistic education I've been privileged to have, because of the type of teachers that never gave up on me, and more so because they taught me how to think, but not what to think. And this is what we have at University College Cork, the type of education that is unmatchable and eternal. Kids like Dilushan may not have the resources nor the opportunity to thrive at school that you and I have had or have, but we can change this reality in our own communities, one child at a time. So if you're a teacher, never give up on kids like this. If anything, give them additional attention to create equity. If you have friends like Dilushan in your class, never make fun of them, but make sure they have fun. Not everyone is born to privilege, and those of us who are carry a responsibility to make sure equality is created if it doesn't already exist. Non sibi sed omnibus, not for one, but for all. Today, the acronym that should be taking global center stage is none other than TEAM. Together, everyone achieves more. So let's work towards that. And I cannot wait to hear the stories of the Dilushans you meet, the math equations you derive to solve poverty, the plays you write to defy stereotypes, and the lives that you are going to save and change on a daily basis. Always remember, you can be whoever you want to be as long as you know who that person is. So don't let society or anyone else tell you otherwise. I have faith in you to turn peace into action. Thank you for your attention.